I don't need to get a job. I enjoy my job. I already have. So why do I need to go work a 9 to 5 job when I enjoy what I do? Because I receive packages like this where I can try stuff, like ramen. And I got like a Tupac shirt and I got lip gloss. So why would I want to work when I have amazing supporters who send me awesome gifts?
Treated. You're in a house. You're saying that you're focusing on social media and your brand. At some point, you have to say your brand, but also you have to look at what are you going to do to get you out of this situation? How are you going to make money? Because it is, as people pointed out in the comments, it may not get you, $1,000 enough to pay a 1 bedroom apartment right away. But it would be getting you something. So you have to. I mean, we have to look and we have to be rational here. Social media is not going to get you $10,000, anything more, but you could go to a full-time job and get some money to help you move out of your parents' house. Do you even want to move out of your parents' house, or do you want to stay living with it?
When you were in the hospital and I came at 2 a.m, open heart surgery, the first thing you said was, "Hi, Daddy."
Okay, go. Jesus Christ.
Bye, guys. Look, if nobody want me around, I'll move.
Oh, yeah. What happened to Tophia's family is absolutely tragic. And the fact that a lot of you can't seem to grasp that like two things can be true. She's not the greatest person, but she also did not deserve any of what happened within the last 24 hours.
I have been called ugly all my life. I've been made fun of for my looks I can't control. And it doesn't make anybody feel good. I try so hard to take care of myself, and the fact that people come online, make fun of my hygiene because of one video I got bullied at my job. And the funny thing about it is, well, it's not funny, but is I can't do anything about this stuff because people justify it.
It all started with live streams that seemed harmless, silly, chaotic, sometimes funny, sometimes confusing. But no one could have predicted that Tophiachu, once a quirky internet girl, would become one of TikTok's most controversial names. From animal neglect to shocking racial remarks, live-streamed family dysfunction, and even dark fetishization allegations, this wasn't just drama anymore. It was turning into a disturbing timeline of online unraveling, and the internet, it was watching it all unfold. Tophiachu, real name Tophia Slidell, was born in 1994 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Her family became part of her online persona, with her mother, Marie, nicknamed Mamachu, her father, Donald Slidell, Papachu, and her brother Donald Jr., Brothachu, all being turned into characters in what she called the Chu family, or Chu universe. This branding, while playful at first, later became symbolic of a deeper dysfunction the internet would slowly begin to unravel. As of now, her audience includes over 400,000 followers on TikTok, 20,000 on Instagram, and a small yet loyal YouTube subscriber base of just over 4,000. Despite the seemingly modest numbers compared to massive influencers, her engagement came from something more intense. People did not just follow her for entertainment. They followed her because they couldn't look away from the chaos. Tophiachu's social media journey began around 2016. Her early posts included lip-syncing videos, comedic skits, quirky artwork, and singing. She explored all sorts of creative styles, attempting duets, trendy dances, skits, and even storytelling content. She tried everything, hoping that something would click. Her persona was unfiltered, and while at times awkward, it made her appear authentic to many of her early followers. She posted artwork that, though amateur, hinted at real talent that just needed nurturing. Her lip syncs were comedic, not polished. Her singing voice wasn't always on key, but her energy was undeniable. In 2019, everything changed. She uploaded a YouTube video about getting fired from her first job. It was a dramatic retelling of how she allegedly got terminated banned from Dunkin' Donuts due to hygiene issues. In the video, she emotionally declared she would never get another job again, and this moment, though humiliating, was what made her go viral. The internet latched onto her story, not necessarily out of admiration, but curiosity. She became meme-worthy. The line about being fired over hygiene issues became the focal point of mockery, and though she later tried to change the narrative and offer a new version of the story, the damage and the publicity was already done. Rather than disappear from the embarrassment, Tophia leaned in. She decided to stop pursuing traditional jobs and committed herself fully to being an influencer. She migrated to TikTok, where her chaotic yet oddly compelling content began to grow a niche following. The internet wasn't just laughing at her anymore, they were watching to see what she'd do next. Her early content on TikTok felt more silly than sinister. She rambled about personal stories, shared eccentric thoughts, and gave off that vibe of a misunderstood girl who maybe just needed a break. She had a messy background, sure, but she was also relatable to people who felt out of place themselves. Her audience grew not because of polished branding, but because she felt real, raw, and chaotic. Still, even in the midst of all the laughs and secondhand embarrassment, something deeper was already brewing, and very soon that lovable messiness would start to look like something else entirely. It began with Hashi, her small brown Chihuahua, who quickly became one of the most tragic characters in Tophiachu's online saga. From the moment the dog was introduced on stream, viewers noticed that Hashi did not seem comfortable. The dog would bark nervously, growl often, and physically retreat from Tophia or anyone else on screen. There was a visible unease. Hashi flinched when approached and avoided eye contact, clear signs, according to many viewers, of fear or anxiety. Despite all this, Tophiachu barely gave her attention. It was as though Hashi existed in the background, more like a nuisance than a companion. What upset people the most was the neglect that unfolded in real time. Tophiachu never took Hashi outside for a walk, not even to let her relieve herself. Instead, she layered the apartment floor with pee pads, not just one or two, but stacks of them, overlapping each other in a way that did not even allow for proper sanitation. The dog would pee or poop directly on the carpet, and instead of correcting the behavior through training, Tophia would scold her harshly. She would shout, snap her fingers, or call the dog names, all while refusing to clean up after her properly. There were no attempts to teach the dog or care for her physical or emotional needs. She fed her human junk food, cheap snacks, bits of leftover takeout, and sometimes nothing at all. On several occasions, she was seen yelling at the dog midstream, and on one horrifying live stream, she even threw Hashi across the room out of frustration.
Tophia throws her senior dog Hershey angrily.
That moment when she tossed the dog was a breaking point for many viewers. It wasn't a play toss, it wasn't a joke, it was frustration, fueled and done on camera, with an audience watching in horror. Hashi hit the ground with a thud and whimpered. Instead of expressing concern, Tophiachu brushed it off and continued her live stream as though nothing had happened. People clipped the moment, reposted it across platforms, and demanded she should be reported. But the chaos did not stop there. After moving into a motel, things got worse. In this already unstable environment, she decided to adopt a cat, Peaches. Viewers were shocked. If she couldn't take care of one pet, why bring in another? The motel room was small and cluttered. She did not have the resources or space to give Peaches a healthy environment. The cat cried out frequently on live streams, its meows sharp and desperate. One time the cat tried to snatch a strip of bacon off her plate. Instead of acknowledging that the animal was hungry, she screamed at it and pushed it away. She later laughed about the incident like it was a joke. Another live stream showed her playing video games while Hashi approached her for attention. The dog was pacing, clearly agitated. Tophia grabbed a hairbrush and tossed it in the dog's direction to scare her off, yelling that she was trying to play. These weren't isolated incidents, they were patterns. Despite all of this, Tophia did not rehome the pets. She did not seek help. She did not show remorse. Instead, she kept them almost as background props for her chaotic live streams. And viewers saw everything. Every time she yelled, every time she ignored a cry, every time she put herself before the well-being of her animals. By July 2023, the audience had had enough. A change.org petition titled Justice for Hashi was launched by an anonymous viewer. It quickly gained traction. With hundreds of signatures demanding action, people began calling Albuquerque Animal Welfare to report her behavior. Clips and timestamps were sent in. The case gained traction on Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok. Then came the worst twist of all. In February 2024, Tophiachu posted to her Facebook claiming Hashi had gone missing. According to her post, Mamachu had been walking Hashi outside when another dog came out of nowhere and attacked. During the scuffle, Hashi supposedly got scared and ran off.
Sucks so badly. It really does.
But many people did not buy this version of events. Her response to Hashi's disappearance was strange, cold, almost relieved. She did not organize search parties or flood her socials with posters. She mentioned it briefly, then moved on to ranting about a DoorDash order that had gone wrong. She cried harder over a missing meal than she did over a missing pet. She never followed up with updates, never begged the community for help. Her emotional detachment was loud and clear. That is when Reddit exploded with speculation. Threads popped up dissecting her post. Some wondered if she had made up the story to cover something darker. A few accused her of purposely letting Hashi go. Others went even further, suggesting that Hashi may have been harmed or unalived behind the scenes. There was no hard proof, but the timeline and behavior did not help her case. Whether or not those darker theories were true, one thing was undeniable. Tophiachu had failed Hashi. From the beginning, she never gave that dog the care, patience, or love it needed. And when the dog was finally gone, her actions spoke louder than words. This was the moment the internet turned on her. The sympathy she once had evaporated. She was no longer the messy, misunderstood girl people felt sorry for. She had become something worse, neglectful, careless, and in the eyes of many, cruel. But it did not stop with the pets. As time went on, Tophiachu's live streams started becoming more offensive, and not just in subtle ways. Her followers began noticing a disturbing pattern in the way she talked about race and identity. She frequently made racist comments on stream, speaking casually in ways that many found deeply uncomfortable. She declared that white people were the problem and often positioned herself in arguments where she weaponized race as a defense even when it did not apply.
And what I've seen a lot on my page is a lot of non-black people saying, you're not black, you can't speak on this. You're not black either, so why are you telling a black person they can't speak on something? I've never, ever understood people being the type of people they are to tell a black person they can't speak on something when they're not black themselves, or saying people that are not black can't speak on anything. Who said people who are not black can't speak on anything? That's why racism exists, because people like you tell people they can't speak on anything. There are certain things, yes, where non-black people should keep their noses out of the business and just sit there and watch. But again, a lot of white people have stuck their noses in other people's business and started talking about how they think our entertainment is drama for them.
These weren't one-off mistakes. They became a recurring part of her rants and chaotic storytelling. She dismissed her own Mexican background by saying Mexican isn't a race. Usually, when viewers pointed out that her identity claims were confusing or inconsistent, this phrase was often used to deflect criticism or dodge accountability. At the same time, she loudly insisted she was black because of her father, Tophiachu. But her own mother, on a recorded live stream, once mentioned that Tophiachu wasn't even her biological father.
Whenever there's black people going back and forth on live streams, white people try to insert themselves. Stick your nose out of it. You should be using your nose to figure out what type of spices and herbs you should be using in your food because they're unseasoned, rather than sticking your nose in other people's business. I will never understand non-black people trying to tell and this is what's crazy about people coming to my page. It's non-black people, most of them trying to tell me I'm not black. You're not black. You're mad that I'm black. You are probably one of those people that thinks in your head you're black, you're delusional, you wish you was black. It's getting weird. How are some of y'all allowing non-black people to sit here and tell a black person they're not black? Some of y'all hate being called bigots. You hate being called anti-black. Instead of arguing about being called anti-black, why don't you fix that? And why don't you start calling the anti-black out? And why don't you start making a change and educating yourself and doing stuff to work towards not being called anti-black instead of being so mad that you're called anti-black? Most of y'all don't like the fact that I call you bigots and you get so mad. Just put the shoe on and wear it.
This contradiction added fuel to the fire. Viewers felt she was picking and choosing her rest based on what was convenient in the moment. One of the most upsetting moments for many came when she referred to darker skin tones as burnt color. She tried to frame it as a neutral comment, saying she herself wasn't that shade or therefore couldn't be racist. But the implications of her words revealed ignorance at best and harm at worst. She then backed that up in the statement, "People of color can't be racist," which only deepened the backlash. To many viewers, it felt like she was using identity politics as a shield instead of acknowledging the real harm her words caused.
It's not that hard to acknowledge things, okay? Not once have I ever tried to lie about anything. The only reason why it got confusing on other people's platforms because I myself feel like I don't need to use other people's platforms to defend myself. I can use my own platform. And I have said there's videos out there. I don't gotta lie. And I've explained my whole situation. Some of y'all refuse to take accountability for your actions. When someone calls you a bigot, not me, not I, and you get so mad and defensive. Or when someone calls you anti-black, I have ice making. You'll be like, me? Anti-black? Where? Ugh, I can't stand this girl. Like, okay, you can't stand me. I don't even care whether or not I stand you. You're not paying my bills. You're not helping me out. You're not doing anything for me, so why would I care about you? All old hypocritical you. The only thing you have to say is I'm not black or that I'm 30. I'm too old to be talking about anything. When does politics have age? And I don't really even get into politics, but when does politics have age? You're too old to be playing games. Do you know how many adults make money playing games? Maybe let me do something that I like besides makeup. You're old, you're ugly, and you're not black. Where am I ugly? Some of y'all, there was this old lady that looked like the Crypt Keeper on lives on another app talking about me when you went away from, well, you know.
In addition to those racial controversies, Tophiachu began using the R slur, an outdated and offensive term directed at people with intellectual disabilities. This wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was repeated more than once, and she never apologized. Instead, she acted like the criticism was overblown. Another shift that disturbed viewers was the way she began to code switch, slipping into what people described as a fake blizzant whenever she wanted to sound tough, aggressive, or hood. She exaggerated her voice, posture, and expressions in a way that felt performative, disrespectful, and deeply rooted in stereotyping Black communities. Many accused her of cultural appropriation and identity exploitation. Shockingly, she also used slurs aimed at her own background. Despite identifying as Mexican when convenient, she used derogatory Hispanic terms, including the B slur. These instances were not subtle. They were live-streamed, public, and completely unfiltered. When people called her out, her defense was that white people had no right to question her blackness, framing the criticism as racially motivated. But the truth was, much of the backlash was coming from the Black and Hispanic communities themselves, many of whom did not feel represented or respected by her words. She also waded into the LGBTQ plus space with equally insensitive remarks. When the topic of trans rights came up, she casually dismissed transphobia by saying it's just fear of trans people. She reduced an entire struggle, one that affects countless lives, to a shallow definition. These moments were not part of some larger conversation. They were throwaway lines meant to start drama or laughs, but to many, they were revealing of how little she actually cared about the communities she claimed to relate to. What made all this worse was how she used these heavy topics as entertainment. Racism, identity, trans rights. They were tools in her live stream toolkit, not for advocacy or real discussion, but for clout, chaos, and attention. She mocked, she baited, and she dodged accountability at every turn. The result, her audience began to shift. What was once made up of curious, maybe sympathetic followers turned into horrified onlookers. She wasn't just chaotic anymore. She had become harmful, and people could not ignore it any longer. When her TikTok videos started underperforming and the engagement dipped, flipped, Tophiachu shifted her focus to live streaming. It wasn't just a creative pivot, it was a financial one. Unlike edited videos that took time or effort to plan, the result? Her audience began to shift. What was once made up of curious, maybe sympathetic followers turned into horrified onlookers. She wasn't just chaotic anymore, she had become harmful, and people couldn't ignore it any longer. But live streams are unforgiving. There are no filters, no edits, and no second takes. What you show is what the world sees, and what the world saw behind the curtain of Tophiachu's content was far more disturbing than anyone expected. Her mother, Mamachu, became a constant background figure during these live streams. At first, her appearances seemed harmless, but over time, viewers noticed subtle but unsettling patterns. Mamachu often looked drained. She moved slowly, coughed persistently, and sometimes let out laughs that felt more like strained attempts at hiding discomfort than real joy. Her posture was slouched, and her expressions frequently conveyed fatigue or confusion. Many viewers speculated she might be dealing with an illness or chronic condition that required more care and attention than she was getting. But Tophiachu never paused to acknowledge any of this. Her mother's presence, as frail and visible as it was treated like background noise. More concerning than Mamachu's health was the way Tophiachu spoke to her. The tone she used wasn't one of care, it was one of control. She backed orders on cameras, interrupted her mother mid-sentence, and often belittled her for doing simple things like talking or walking around. In one particularly viral moment, Mamachu answered a phone call during a live stream, and Tophiachu exploded. She shouted at her, accusing, declaring, "That is why you wanted to leave us already." The room fell silent. Chat comments began flooding in. People watching in real time were stunned, not just by the words, but by the venom behind them.
That time Tofupa screams at Mamachu for answering the phone.
Me talking about misfits.
Get out. Get off the phone and stop calling.
Hang up the phone!
Stop calling my phone.
Hang up the phone!
You guys have no business.
Hang up the phone! Hang up the phone! Give me the
Oh,
phone!
he answered that.
Well, just let him answer!
I told you to
Stop it!
He answered, that's why.
Well, let him answer the phone! You're not gonna help any! That's why I want to move out and leave you fuckers away from because you're causing me problems. No. Both that back in. I'm not gonna get yelled at.
The internet reacted quickly. Accusations of emotional abuse surfaced. People started sharing clips and timestamps from past live streams where similar behavior had occurred. Rather than address the growing concern, Tophiachu attempted to silence it by staging a rebuke. In a later live stream, she brought her mother on camera and asked her to confirm that there was no abuse happening. Mamachu, looking visibly coerced and uncomfortable, said they simply argued sometimes and that her hearing loss made communication harder. She insisted that her daughter wasn't mistreating her.
Mom, there's a video going around of people saying that I was real aggressive towards you. Please explain to them.
She was not doing anything with me like that. You guys are just trying to, have something to say. My daughter does not harass me or anything like that. We have a real good relationship. Yeah, we argue sometimes, but everybody does. And it's not very violent. You guys just take it for being violent. And if you must know, since I have to explain myself, I wear hearing aids, so if she's loud, I don't hear. I accept that. I'll show you guys, so you can see. See? There it is.
There. And also, people have been harassing me, especially on my burner number and calling my mom's home phone number multiple times. And literally harassing her after she said stop, and they're causing her to be sick and saying I'm the one that's causing her to be sick. Now you guys know literally what's going on. Like, these people literally constantly are trying to do things. So, because someone wants to say that there's a video out there, this is proof. Like, I literally didn't coach her to say nothing.
But then, the moment that turned everything upside down happened. As Mamachu tried to explain herself, Tophiachu leaned in and whispered, "Take out your hearing aids. Show the camera." The whisper was audible. The control was unmistakable. What was meant to be a defense quickly became further evidence. It was as if she was directing her mother mid-scene, reminding her of what to say and do. Following that live stream, Tophiachu once again took to the camera, this time to defend herself. While Mamachu was coughing heavily in the background, Tophia kept talking over her. She insisted she hadn't coached her mom and that everything said on live stream was honest and organic. But just the fact that she brought up the possibility of coaching was enough to fuel more speculation and suspicion. No one had to say it out loud. The implication was already clear. People started to realize that Mamachu wasn't just a parent sharing space on camera. She was being used as part of the content. Her presence was involuntary. Her discomfort was visible. And yet, Tophiachu ignored it all. She never paused the live stream to check if her mother was okay. She never offered water, comfort, or even acknowledgement. Her mother's coughs, slumped posture, and quiet compliance became part of the background, like a set piece in her live stream scenery. To viewers, this was the final straw. They no longer saw Tophiachu as just a chaotic internet personality. They saw someone who was using her mother as a prop, manipulating her and refusing to take accountability for the growing discomfort her content was causing. And just like that, any remaining sympathy for Tophiachu began to evaporate. By now, Reddit was on fire. The subreddit Tophiachu had become a digital archive of chaos. Every scandal that erupted on TikTok found its way there, dissected and discussed in microscopic detail. Users clipped her live streams, documented her outbursts, saved screenshots of her controversial statements, and made sure nothing slipped through the cracks. It wasn't just a few angry users. It was an entire online community united by one purpose: to keep receipts. People compiled long, organized lists that chronicled her every misstep, from racist remarks to pet neglect, from emotional manipulation of her mother to the increasingly disturbing hints of fetishization. Nothing was too small to be included. Some users even created timelines, mapping out the depths and patterns of her behavior to show just how consistent the chaos had become. These weren't just callouts, they were case files. It was around this time that the term lolcow began surfacing in reference to Tophiachu. The label, rooted in internet culture, refers to someone whose behavior is so outrageous that people tune in just to watch the train wreck unfold. Not because they admire them, not because they support them, but because they can't look away. That is what she had done. That is what she had become, a spectacle, an unfiltered feed of controversy and dysfunction. The shift was undeniable. Tophiachu no longer had an audience that cheered her on. Instead, she had an audience that was documenting her downfall in real time. Viewers weren't fans, they were witnesses. Her every move was catalogued, analyzed, and archived. Even her smallest live streams found their way onto Reddit, where users would break them down frame by frame. It wasn't fandom anymore. It was digital surveillance, and for the first time, Tophiachu wasn't in control of her own narrative. The internet was. And then, as if all the controversies weren't already damning enough, it got darker, much darker. Viewers began noticing a repetitive, almost obsessive focus on a particular group, Asian boys, especially those who appeared young, sometimes barely out of high school. Her comments weren't simply admiration or harmless fandom. They started to build a pattern, one that was increasingly hard to ignore. The way she described them, often highlighting their looks with an uncomfortable level of enthusiasm, made it seem less like appreciation and more like fetishization. Her tone would shift when talking about them, becoming softer, giddier, and more animated. It was different from how she spoke about anyone else. It wasn't just that she liked them, it was that she liked them too much, and in a way that felt performative, obsessive, and uncomfortable. The discomfort only grew when she repeatedly linked this interest to her well-documented love for BL, boy love, content. While the genre in itself isn't inherently problematic, Tophiachu began speaking about the fictional, problematic fictional, often romantic relationships between teenage boys in BL shows and pairing it with real life commentary about actual teenage boys. She made explicit connections that blurred the line between fiction and real world desire, and to many viewers, it felt like she was projecting fantasy onto real people, some of whom were still minors. She frequently referenced specific shows, storylines, and characters within the BL genre, some of which involved very young characters, and then directly shifted the conversation to real life idols, teenage actors, or even random TikTok boys who fit the same aesthetic. Viewers began picking up on how these moments were never isolated. They were part of a repeated cycle in her content. Mention a BL couple, pivot to praising Asian boy, then giggle or make comments that tiptoed toward sexualization. Over time, people began compiling these moments into montages, showing that this wasn't an occasional slip, it was a pattern of behavior. The vibe was less fun appreciation and more like grooming fantasy playing out on live stream. The internet moved quickly to investigate. People began pulling receipts, clipping the live streams, collecting screenshots, and time-stamping TikToks where she made these remarks. They noted how she repeatedly made suggestive comments about K-pop idols who were barely out of high school. One viewer even stitched together a compilation of all the times she gushed over underage Asian boys, pairing it with her BL commentary to highlight the alarming pattern. It did not take long before discussion started shifting from this is weird to this feels predatory. Whereas before she was seen as chaotic, careless, or even offensive, this was the tipping point. She had crossed into territory where people were no longer just annoyed, they were alarmed. Her name began surfacing in conversations about online safety, particularly regarding the boundaries between adult creators and teen audiences. People started asking if her content was safe, not just for adults to watch, but especially for minors. What made it worse was her complete lack of self-awareness. She never addressed the criticism. She never acknowledged how uncomfortable her words were making people. Instead, she kept doing it almost defiantly. For every viewer who left, another stayed to document. What began as influencer controversy quickly evolved into a case study in unchecked, potentially predatory behavior. People began to say this wasn't just drama anymore. It was something that needed serious attention, possibly even from authorities or platform moderators. And that's exactly what happened. Threads emerged not just criticizing her, but warning others to stay away. Creators made content dissecting her behavior. Commenters flooded her posts, asking why she kept mentioning minors. What started as a few jokes and niche references had now turned her into a walking scandal. Her name was no longer just attached to controversy, it had become a digital cautionary tale, a stark example of how unchecked online behavior can spiral into something deeply harmful, especially when it involves vulnerable groups. The internet was no longer just watching, it was keeping score and sounding alarms. We've only scratched the surface. Tophiachu's story isn't just about internet fame, it is about what happens when you treat chaos like content. From neglecting pets to racist rants, from yelling at her mother to disturbing online behavior, this is a timeline of someone spiraling while the world watched. And this is only part 1. In part 2, we'll break down the fetishization allegations, the monetization tactics, the family fallout, because this story, it is far from over. Like and subscribe to keep up with the full picture, and let us know, what do you think about this TikTok's rabbit hole?